of the foreign workers and effective national companies in our country have the right to hire foreign workers. I am going to give the word to our first speaker, one of the best Bulgarian economists, Karssen Stanchhev.
Thank you for the introduction. It's like a obituary. Can we go to the first slide? Oh, there is a pointer. Here we go. First, I'm very happy that I'm here. And I will start with something very simple. This is my favorite quotation from Adam Smith. You know, to have a country rich, or people of a country rich, you know, there are three very simple things to be established. Number one is peace, number two is easy taxes, about this we worked, and number three is tolerable administration of justice. The governments which fail to somehow protect these three things, you know, are basically counterproductive in terms of opulence, in terms of welfare, and so on and so forth. So, the market for skills has been always very international. So we have here Rainer Adam. Where is Rainer? Oh, okay. So he supported the translation and publication of a book in Bulgaria called A Stand for Liberty by Rüdiger von Fritsch. The story is about a nephew of Rüdiger who remained in East Germany. Rüdiger was from West Germany, and after a long story of preparation for about 2 years, they've managed to smuggle 3 East Germans through the Bulgarian border, through Istanbul, and then move them to West Germany. So what does it mean? It means that there were no borders on humans, on movement of people, even under the Warsaw Pact. Of course, you know, about 2,000, not only East Germans, but Czechs, East Germans, some Bulgarians were killed on the Bulgarian border, you know, to protect, you know, the people of going abroad. So, but this is a very, very limited experience of the of not only Bulgaria but Europe. So Europe used to enjoy for centuries, during the Middle Ages as well, the freedom of movement. So if you look at the genetic composition of every European nation, it's very mixed. So Bulgarians are half Germans, half Greeks. So the Russians are rather Finns and Celts. Ukrainians are roughly Celts and Swedes and that sort of stuff. What also is important is, you know, other personal stories. You know, one of the personal stories which is very important for this university is the personal story of Panizza's family. Dimi Panizza was a dear friend of mine, and I know the story, you know, from his family. So they were expropriated immediately after the communist revolution in 1944. The family was rather rich. If you go to downtown Sofia, across the street, across the square from the Sofia University, there is a nice building. This is the Panizza's family building. It used to be the Chinese embassy during the communist years. So it was one of the richest families in Bulgaria. So the father, Panizza's, Dimi's father, was a banker. They fled the country, moved to France. Dimi interrupted his education. His father, who used to be a major shareholder in one of the substantial banks in Bulgaria, studied as a bank clerk, not even a clerk, but as a cashier in Paribas, as far as I remember. So gradually, his father moved again, from the lowest position in a bank, to head of department in Paribas. So Dimi didn't have that. He was a porter in the bank. Then he moved to the publishing business, and by the mid-60s, he was already the executive director of the largest publishing house in the world, Reader's Digest. So why it happened? It happened because there was no protection of the labor market. So France, even after the World War II, was accepting, foreigners, refugees from all over the place, not only whatever Western Europeans or former colonies of France. France was accepting all these people. So the refugees were not refugees. They were simply people with skills, and if they managed to find application for those skills, they were doing okay. If they were not able to find application for those skills, it was their problem. The problem with the labor market came in the mid-70s of the 19th century with the so-called establishment of the welfare state. The German example was replicated in other countries. The next country to repeat it was the United Kingdom. The reform, the so-called people's budget, was drafted by Lord George and Winston Churchill. They lost elections, but the people's budget remained. So they copied the so-called German experience. The German experience was that you will receive some benefits after you retire, and you will receive some health insurance for injuries on the workplace. This supposedly had to be financed by taxes. The idea of Bismarck was that they fight the classical liberals, who were very strong as a political movement in Germany, and Bismarck cooperated with the socialists. The system worked for one very simple reason. So on one pensioner you had 123 workers, the late 70s of the 19th century. So when, as it is today in Germany, the system goes into 4 workers and 1 pensioner, or if it goes to Bulgarian situation where on 1 pensioner you have 1.8 workers, so the system is becoming protective. So the market protection is including the negative sentiments towards refugees and that sort of stuff. Is a result of the welfare state, of the people's budgets, which is a common phenomenon in Europe. So if the welfare state in the 19th century or the beginning of the 20th century was relatively small, the welfare state now is relatively big. Because Rainer is a friend of mine and I like today Germany, so the burden of the welfare state of Germany is 4 times the GDP of the country. These are the obligations the politicians were accepting towards the population in order to be elected, of course. So the German economy is about 2 trillion euro, a bit more. So the unfunded obligations of the German government is 400%, 420% of GDP. So in Bulgaria we are doing relatively okay. It is 2.5 economies of Bulgaria. So, but there are countries which are doing even worse. So Poland is about 700% of GDP, the obligations to the population. In this situation, you start hating everyone who can free ride on your welfare system. So the deepest foundation of the negative sentiment against foreigners, against refugees, and against migrants is the welfare state. There are other foundations, but I don't have time to discuss all this. Is there somebody from Kazakhstan over here? There was a quite big diaspora in AUBG, from Kazakhstan. I'm not sure whether they are still here. The first generation which suffers is the younger generation. So if you take Kazakhstan, China, the so-called Eastern Tigers, and you compare them with Europe, the well-being of the younger generation, or the employment of the younger generation in those countries is virtually zero. It is basically 3 times lower than the average unemployment rate in those countries. In Europe, the average unemployment rate of the young generation is twice higher than the average unemployment. So in some countries it is even more. In Greece it is 3 times higher than the average unemployment, and in Spain until recently it was 4 times higher than the average unemployment. Why is this so? Because the labor codes, they protect the welfare system first. Second, they protect those who are already with a job against those who would be competitors to those who have already a job. So one of those things, which was absolutely visible in Spain, the youth unemployment percentage in Spain was 60% of all the youth. This was because of one very simple reason. If you are an employer and you need to fire a worker, you should pay 30 monthly salaries. So it is more than 2 years. So you pay 100% of the salaries. The reason for unemployment in Spain in France is very much similar. So it is about 20 months. So in Spain they reduce it to 9 months. So, and the unemployment of the youth is going down, and the overall situation with the unemployment is improving. In France, they reduce it to 6 months. And of course, they had protests. Frederic was absolutely right. If you need a protest, you go to France. Something of the sort is the situation in New Europe, and I will give some examples of Bulgaria. One of them is my family example. My younger daughter and my son-in-law, they finished AUBG. Then my daughter, she was accounting, business administration, finished with cum laude and that sort of stuff, not so important. The same computer science was my son-in-law. So she worked for a couple of important institutions, the financial department of Hewlett-Packard, Fair Play International, I'm not sure whether you know it. This is the largest cattle breeding fund in Bulgaria. And then she was in the non-performing loans department of the largest bank in Bulgaria, of Unicredit. So, but her professor insisted that, you better go somewhere to do a master degree. And eventually, my daughter applied to the business school of Sydney. She got a scholarship, which basically means that you pay $56,000, and then if you perform okay as a student, you get the money back. So, and one Sunday we were sitting at home with the in-laws and sort of making jokes about my son-in-law, that this whatever talented young lady will go to Sydney, and you won't see her, for about a year and a half. So Nikki left the room and came in 20 minutes back and said, I sent my application, my resume, to 5 companies in Sydney. So it was Sunday. Monday he received 4 responses, and by Wednesday he was interviewed by 3 of the companies, accepted to work in Sydney, and he was selecting where to go to work. So, which basically means that if the system was not working with the protection of the labor market during the communist years where you had the Iron Curtain, so it won't work at all. Never. It cannot work. So the largest taxi company, the largest hotel company, the largest trading company, they don't have physical assets. They have brains. Automotive electronics. You don't know, but the best producer of automotive electronics in the world is in Bulgaria. The company is called EMI. It is located in Blagoevgrad. Originally, it was a Belgian investment by a Bulgarian who basically privatized, the electronics industry of East Germany for the Belgian company. Then got some financing from the Belgian company, opened greenfield factory in Blagoevgrad, started producing automotive electronics, other things, and that sort of stuff. Split the company into two. Sold one of the parts, to one American company, the other one, to Texas Instruments. So the automotive part of it was then resold by the American company